My name is Emily Winsley. I will be showing you a photo story of a portion of a personal narrative genre study that I taught to a third grade class in the spring semester of 2010. It is based on a philosophy called Study Driven, where the students are given the opportunity to learn by exploring and discovering on their own instead of it just being told to them and tested as quickly as possible. I read about this philosophy from the book Study Driven by Katie Woodray. I will start by reading you the same story I read these third graders at the beginning of our unit. It is called 11 by Sandra Cisneros. What they don't understand about birthdays, and what they'll never tell you, is that when you're 11, you're also 10, and 9, and 8, and 7, and 6, and 5, and 4, and 3, and 2, and 1. And when you wake up on your 11th birthday, you expect to feel 11, but you don't. You open your eyes and everything's just like yesterday, only it's today, and you don't feel 11 at all. You feel like you're still 10, and you are, underneath the year that makes you 11. Like some days you might say something stupid, and that's the part of you that's still 10. Or maybe some days you might want to sit on your mama's lap because you're scared, and that's the part of you that's 5. And maybe one day when you're all grown up, maybe you'll need to cry like you're 3, and that's okay. That's what I tell Mama when she's sad and needs to cry. Maybe she's feeling 3. Because the way you grow old is kind of like an onion, or like the rings inside a tree trunk, or like my little wooden dolls that fit one inside the other, each year inside the next one. That's how being 11 years old is. You don't feel 11, not right away. It takes a few days, weeks even, sometimes even months before you say 11 when they ask you. And you don't feel smart 11, not until you're almost 12. That's the way it is. Only today, I wish I didn't have only 11 years rattling inside me like pennies in a tin Band-Aid box. Today I wish I was 102 instead of 11, because if I was 102, I'd have known what to say when Mrs. Price put that red sweater on my desk. I would have known how to tell her it wasn't mine, instead of just sitting there with that look on my face and nothing coming out of my mouth. "Whose is this?" Mrs. Price says, and she holds the red sweater up in the air for the class to see. "Whose? It's been sitting in the coat room for a month." "Not mine," says everybody. "Not me." "It has to belong to somebody," Mrs. Price keeps saying, but nobody can remember. It's an ugly sweater with red plastic buttons and a collar and sleeves all stretched out like you could use it for a jump rope. It may be 1,000 years old, and even if it belonged to me, I wouldn't say so. Well, maybe because I'm skinny. Maybe because she doesn't like me. That stupid Sylvia Salvador says. I think it belongs to Rachel. An ugly sweater like that, all raggedy and old? But Mrs. Price believes her. Mrs. Price takes the sweater and puts it right on my desk. But when I open my mouth, nothing comes out. That's not mine, I finally say in a little voice that was maybe me when I was 4. Of course it's yours, Mrs. Price says. I remember you wearing it once. Because she's older, and the teacher, she's right, and I'm not. Not mine, not mine, not mine. But Mrs. Price is already turning to page 32 in math problem number 4. I don't know why, but all of a sudden I'm feeling sick inside, like the part of me that's 3 wants to come out of my eyes, only I squeeze them shut tight and bite down on my teeth real hard and try to remember, today I'm 11. 11. Mama's making a cake for me tonight, and when Papa comes home, everybody will sing happy birthday to you. But when that sick feeling goes away, and I open my eyes, that red sweater's still sitting there like a big red mountain. I move the red sweater to the corner of my desk with my ruler. I move my pencil and books and eraser as far from it as possible. I even move my chair a little to the right. Not mine, not mine, not mine. In my head I'm thinking, how long till lunchtime? How long till I can take that red sweater and throw it over the schoolyard fence? Or leave it hanging on a parking meter? Or bunch it up in a little ball and toss it in the alley? Except when math period ends, Mrs. Price says loud and in front of everybody, "Now, Rachel, that's enough," because she's seen I've shoved the red sweater to the tippy-tip corner of my desk, and it's hanging all over the edge like a waterfall. But I don't care. "Rachel," Mrs. Price says. She says it like she's getting mad. "You put that sweater on right now and no more nonsense." "But it's not now," Mrs. Price says. This is when I wish I wasn't 11, because all the years inside of me, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1, are pushing at the back of my eyes when I put one arm through one sleeve of the sweater that smells like cottage cheese, and then the other arm through the other, and stand there with my arms apart like the sweater hurts me, and it does, all itchy and full of germs that aren't even mine. That's when everything I've been holding in since this morning, since when Mrs. Price put that sweater on my desk, Finally, let's go. And all of a sudden, I'm crying in front of everybody. I wish I was invisible, but I'm not. I'm 11 and it's my birthday today, and I'm crying like a 3-year-old in front of everybody. I'm putting my head down on the desk and burying my face in my stupid clown sweater arms. My face all hot, the spit coming out of my mouth like I can't stop the little animal noises from coming out of me until there aren't any more tears left in my eyes. And it's just my body shaking like when you have the hiccups, and my whole head hurts like when you drink milk too fast. But the worst part is, right before the bell rings for lunch, that stupid Phyllis Lopez, who is even dumber than Sylvia Salvador, says she remembers the red sweater is hers. I take it off right away and give it to her. Only Mrs. Price pretends like everything's okay. Today I'm 11. There's a cake Mama's making for tonight, and when Papa comes home from work, we'll eat it. There'll be candles and presents, and everybody will sing happy birthday to you, Rachel, only it's too late. I'm 11 today. I'm 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. But I wish I was 102. I wish I was anything but 11, because I want today to be far away already, far away like a runaway balloon, like a tiny, tiny O in the sky, so teeny you have to close your eyes to see it. So, the philosophy of study driven includes finding an excellent mentor text, like the one I just read, and using it to model to the students what a good writing piece in that genre would look like. So, what characteristics it would have, etc. They can then pick out the best parts of that story and use it in their writing. What we do is we read the story once for enjoyment, and then we read it again so that the students can have a chance to analyze what made that story great. We can then come back as a class and write down on chart paper or on the smartboard what they found. These students saw that there was voice, characters, dialogue. It tells what you're thinking, it tells what's happening, repetition, hyperbole, emotions. They know that a personal narrative is a small part of your life that tells a big story, and that it has a beginning, middle, and end. This wasn't the first genre study that these students have done, so they have had some practice with this. But just look at what they've come up with. It's amazing. The only thing I would change here is that I would add a picture or some kind of representation for each of the characteristics that they found. I did notice that some of the students were having trouble with some of the words. They didn't understand it, so it would have helped them to do that. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. So the next day we came back as a class and I read them another story. It's called Shortcut by Donald Cruz. In this story, I modeled how I would want the students to search for the characteristics that they listed on their personal narratives chart. Whenever I noticed a characteristic as I was reading this story, I would put a post-it note on that page and write what the characteristic was. This was actually after we had read the story. I came back and told the students that I had just noticed that this was a small part of his life that had a big story, so that's why I put a post-it note there. I told the students that I noticed repetition here, the ... and the we. He says, we looked, we listened, we decided to take the shortcut home. So I told the students that I saw repetition here. It's repeating the word we laughed, we shouted, we sang, we tussled, and I asked the students how they think repeating the word we made the story stronger. Here you can see onomatopoeia and dialogue. You can see in the top left corner, woo woo. It's a little teeny woo woo right now, but there's also dialogue. I hear a train, and that could also be voice because he's really scared and you can tell, but I don't want to confuse the students, so I just said dialogue. I hear a train. So here I noticed that there was emotion, and I can hear their emotion in their dialogue. The train, get off the tracks. What I was trying to do is I was trying to lead the students into knowing that there was emotion in personal narratives. Here I said that there was a lot of onomatopoeia. Basically, it's just this big woo, woo, and it's gotten bigger every page so that they can tell that the train is getting closer. Here I noticed that there was sensory and onomatopoeia. You can see the clickety-clack of the train tracks. I brought up emotion again. I'm still trying to lead them into knowing that there's emotion in personal narratives. So I said, look at how they're clutching their hearts, like, whew, we made it. The students then partnered up and went exploring in different personal narrative stories. I had a bunch of personal narrative picture books for them to look through. What they were doing was finding characteristics from their chart and taking note of them with a post-it. I would walk around the class and help them while they were doing this. The following slides show the students doing this. When we came back as a class, I asked the students to give me examples of voice. As the students were giving me examples, I started to realize that they didn't understand what voice was. Some of them did, but a lot of them didn't. So this gave me the opportunity to teach it. They thought that voice was when you could hear a person talking. I had to explain to them that yes, it could be when they're talking, but usually when you hear voice, you can hear someone's personality. For example, when that boy saw the train coming, he said, "There's a train coming!" And I told the students that yes, you can hear that he's talking, but you can also hear that he's scared. And the part that he's scared is the part where you can hear his voice. I had planned this lesson to take one day, and then the following day we would begin brainstorming for their own personal narrative. So I had to modify the pace of instruction in order to give the students adequate discovery time. I realized that the discovery portion of this lesson could take days, even weeks, for the students to really grasp what a personal narrative was enough to write one with similar characteristics. As a teacher, you need to be accepting of this. When the students do finally grasp it, though, they will be outstanding writers in this genre, and they will be able to generalize the things they've learned here into other genres. For example, the students learned about onomatopoeia in their poetry genre study, but they transferred their knowledge to the personal narratives. I also saw an outstanding writing techniques in their students' writing assessments. They were really trying to make their voice stand out. This will be very helpful when they get to high school and college, especially when they're writing college or scholarship application essays. Having their voice and personality stand out in their writing will give them an edge on students who only learn the rules of essay writing. This strategy offers many opportunities for students who have different learning styles because it incorporates auditory, visual, and kinesthetic activities. And for some accommodations, you can facilitate group modeling that would best help a student who's struggling. So it could be partner group, mixed ability, or similar ability. You can also have extra copies of whatever you're reading so the students who need to follow along in order to maintain attention can do so. This whole strategy is a scaffolding of skills. It shows the students how good writers write in a particular genre, gives them an opportunity to study and take notes on particular things that writers use in order to gain other people's attention, and then gives them a chance to try to write it on their own. The publishings that they produce may not be of extraordinary quality, but it's an approximation. The strategy gives students the opportunity to approximate, knowing that if they try their hardest, then they did a good job. I don't know about you, but I would rather take a student's approximation than teaching them the exact way to write this, and then having them miss the mark entirely. With this strategy, you are setting them up for success. Of course, we still need to assess the students on what they learned. This formative assessment is what I used in my lesson. So they would write on one side at the beginning of the day what they knew about personal narratives, and then at the end of the day what they knew about personal narratives. This form of assessment gave me the chance to see what the students were realizing and understanding and what I needed to go back and reteach, like voice. When you assess for the final product, though, you want to assess for evidence of these characteristics, which would be put into a rubric. So you want to assess for how the writer used workshop time wisely, quality and depth, thoughtful and deliberate topic selection, engagement in the necessary work, so the research, gathering, talking, etc., to support the kind of writing she or he was doing, thoughtful and decisive planning for drafting, evidence of revision, that they used the teaching during the study to raise the level of the writing, they paid attention to the presentation and the finished look of the piece. And I got all of these characteristics from on page 160 and 161 of Study Driven by Katie Woodray. And you should look there if you'd like to learn more about this philosophy. Thank you for listening.